Well, hello there. Welcome to the journey. I'm here with my dear friend Sam Sheely, author of I Don't Dwell and founder of Don't Dwell Sanctuary. Welcome, Sam.
Well, thank you. Nice to see you, Rosalie. How are
Nice
you?
to see you too. I'm great. How are you?
Doing well here.
Sam, when I met you, you just look so confident. I mean, I just gravitated towards you because you look like you had everything going on, and you're such a beautiful soul, and I absolutely adored you the minute I saw you. But I read your book, and I was so shocked. I didn't know that you had went through all kinds of situations from the time you were a young kid, and what a shocker. I just have to say that I absolutely love your book, but it was a big shocker. Do you get that reaction a lot?
Yeah, I do get that reaction a lot when people realize how much I go through because I don't talk about it enough, like all my difficulties. I always talk about like the other side, like after it, but during it, it was like really traumatic. Being hit by a car when I was 6 years old that nearly took my life, to the bipolar, to basically coming disabled overnight with the multiple sclerosis. Like that kind of stuff, I just sort of gloss over, but it was 40 years of my life. It was very traumatic. That's where I can really help people today because I've been in those shoes of pain, suffering. I've been through a lot, so that's why I'm so confident today because I came through all of that.
Right. And reading the first chapters of your book when you were a child, and you got hit by the car, um, and going through all that, it just made me wonder, you know, was that like the beginning of this journey for you? Can you bring us back to your childhood and tell us what actually happened with your accident?
Yeah, because I was always like a very nervous and anxious child. They probably label me autistic today, but they didn't have that label back when I was a kid in the 70s and late 60s. But when I was 6 years old, I was getting my ice cream and crossing the street. And when I was crossing the street, I didn't see a van coming my way. And the van, I just heard a rumble to my left, and I looked to the left. I could see the driver wasn't even looking at me, and I couldn't even react, and I was just hit. And when I was hit, I totally lost unconsciousness. I woke up a little bit in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. Then I remember waking up briefly when the gurney slammed into the operating room doors, and I just saw those bright lights of the operating room. Then I went back to sleep. But then a few days later, when I came through, because I was only had a 50% chance that I actually survive that
Wow.
surgery in the accident. But yeah, so when I did came through, I realized that I had a broken hip, a broken elbow, and a lot of head trauma.
Right. And so, do you think that having the accident actually brought on, other things that you described like bipolar and depression? Do you think that that accident kind of onset everything for
Yeah,
you?
it was the onset of everything because I was already anxious and worried before the accident. I was always scared of the world before the accident. So naturally, after the accidents, my parents were always ever protective of me because they must have lost their only child. So they became in a state of worry. So I worried myself sick, literally. So I was a very sickly child, and this very sickly child became very mentally unstable as it grew older. Then I was diagnosed with bipolar in the 20s. After I lost a job, I became very suicidal, and that resulted in like seeing the psychiatrist and just trying to figure out what's going on. Then it took like 5 years and a couple doctors to figure out the medicine and to get me stable again. But I had a few suicidal attempts, because my mindset was that way. Then I also had the pleasure of being a rapid cycler bipolar, which I didn't talk about in the book. That I don't think is I could be like really depressed one minute and really happy an hour later. I would go through 6 to 8 cycles in one day at my worst, from like really
Wow.
sad to super happy. I mean, I was quite erratic, so it took 5 years to get that down.
Right. And I know it must have been really hard for you. And I'm sure that created a lot of conditioning in your mind that you were that way, and that's how, your illness was affecting you. But I know that from reading the book that you overcame a lot of stuff. But I kind of want you to take us through, going from depression in your early 20s and, being diagnosed with MS. I want you to take us on that journey.
Yeah, so after the bipolar, I was just very, I was always in a weird state with the bipolar. Like, really, I believed, I took all my thoughts to be absolute truth. So I had no self esteem. And that's one thing I do have today. That's why I seem confident, because I do have that self esteem. But with the bipolar, I had no self esteem. I was always worried, always anxious, always concerned about what others thought of me. So when I was in that kind of state, I brought on all these autoimmune diseases. It started off with psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis. By the time I was 37, I ended up with the worst migraine of my life. And I was like, there's something wrong here because this doesn't feel like my typical migraine. So I called the doctor. When I called the doctor, he was like, oh, it's probably a migraine. Here's some medicine for it for the weekend. If it's still bad, I'll see you on Monday. Well, that night, it was like, this isn't right. So I went to the ER. They checked me for a stroke. I didn't have a stroke. But he just gave me this he told me taking this medicine that the doctor gave me and see him on Monday. So when I did see him on Monday, the migraine broke for the most part, but at that time I started to have some walking difficulties. So he ordered an MRI, which I had Tuesday, and by Wednesday I was admitted to the hospital.
Right, and they found out you had MS.
No, at that time they didn't know what I had because multiple sclerosis is a process of elimination. So they
Right.
did some testing for 3 days. Then like we'll send you home and we'll let you know when we have more information. Well, I was home for like a day and a half. Yeah, about a day and a half. When I woke up one morning, I couldn't stand. I almost fell out of bed when I tried to get out of bed. I almost fell right to the floor because I had no sense of balance. I could no longer walk. So that sent me back to the ER. So then they readmitted me back to the hospital. I was in the hospital for another 2 or 3 weeks. Then rehab for about a month, learning how to function as a disabled man. When I left the hospital, after all of that, when I left rehab, I could walk about 10 feet in a walk.
And what was going through your mind? I mean, to go through something like that, and kind of like, what do you do but accept that you have this illness? Because we normally in society, well, our society here in America, we normally don't have this process of like, I can overcome illness with my mind. It's almost like you have this illness and you have to accept it. So what was going through your mind?
Well, going through my mind after I was officially diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, it was very mentally unstabilizing. Like my bipolar became unglued, and I got depressive and like in this state of anxious and worry again. So I had to recover from both the bipolar and the multiple sclerosis again. So I was out of work for a bit. For 6, 7 months, I was out of work. So then eventually I did go back to work using a quad cane, the four-prong cane. That's how I would get around. So then I graduated just to a normal cane, then occasional use of a cane. Then the time I was 37, I mean, not, the time I was 44, I was a real couch potato in 2009. So I used to watch like a lot of ghost hunting shows. I was
Yeah.
like, is this real or fake? I didn't really know. So I was like, all right, let me push myself to go to one of these events. So it was middle of the summer, so I was like, well, with this heat, at least it was at nighttime, because it was daytime during the summer, I don't go outside. I would be a summertime hermit, because at 90 degrees, my body would literally shut down. I could not function at all. I couldn't walk. I could barely see, couldn't swallow, massive headaches. So summertime activities were no good for me, but I figured, well, it's nighttime, late at night. I can push myself for an hour with my cooling vest. So a cooling vest is the key to core temperature down, so I can at least function a little bit. So when I was doing that, okay, so I just was going there for this event. I was all geared up. So I'm sitting there in this area called the Casemates at Fort Mifflin in Philadelphia. So there's a person there's like putting out a flashlight. I saw her fiddling with the flashlight. Like, okay, what's this about? So she's doing this flashlight experiment, and she puts a flashlight on, and she's like, turn this flashlight on. So I'm looking at it, and a few seconds later, the flashlight goes on. I'm like, that's interesting. Then she says, turn this flashlight off, and the flashlight goes off. Well, being a skeptic, because see the flashlight going on and off, I put out my flashlight. So now I have two flashlights going on and off. So now I know it's not rigged. There's something here turning off on and off the flashlights. Then a little bit later after that, during the experiment, it actually felt like somebody sat next to me that I couldn't see, and all the hair in my arms stood straight up. I'm like, okay, so this is real. So what am I experiencing? So then I start to read some books, trying to gain some understanding. And the one book I read talked about meditation, and one of the benefits of meditation was inner peace. I simply knew that I needed inner peace, so I started to meditate that night. I just sat there for 5 minutes. I had no techniques. I just know to sit there and be quiet and try not to react or respond to the thoughts. Actually, I didn't know that initially. I would actually tell my thoughts to stop thinking, which I saw
Right.
was eventually was a futile act because it was a thought chasing a thought, so that didn't work. So just trying to sit there and try to be quiet because telling the thoughts to stop didn't stop. But I at least gave myself 5 minutes a day. The mind was getting a little bit quieter, but the first 2 weeks were the toughest with meditation because it was
Right.
constantly telling me that I was wasting my time, that I wasn't deserving of this peace, and all sorts of stories from the mind. But I stuck with it, and by the third week, my mind was going a little bit quieter and quieter. And by the third month, I was 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening. Then I can't explain it. After one meditation one evening, I just heard a voice in my head say, "Perfect spirit." I'm like, that's it. Spirit is whole. It's body and mind that are damaged. Then I can't explain it. I simply knew that all was well. All sense of fear but my health has dropped away. And that triggered my spontaneous remission from these 5 diseases I had. And that night, I started to taper my medicine back. It took 18 months to get off all the medicine. I was on so much medicine, it took 18 months to taper it all off. And it took another bit of time to recover all the damage done to the body from the multiple sclerosis. And I recovered from the damage from the multiple sclerosis by doing yoga, just following my perfect spirit guide that was coming through. Just tell me, go do this, go do that.
Okay. And I just want everybody to know something really important that you said. You started with only 5 minutes a day, and I want everybody to know that that's how you start meditation. You can start with 2 minutes, you can start with three, you can start with five. It just takes time. And if you sit there and you commit to a practice at least 5 minutes, you can do it. Because I know that when we start meditating, a lot of times it becomes really hard for us because we can't shut like the chatter in our minds. But yeah, you do 5 minutes and you will develop over time a practice. And that's actually how you started with 5 minutes a day. And okay, so
Right.
when you heard, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Was this? I started practicing. I just gave myself 5 minutes at time, 5 minutes at a time. And my mantra to keep me going during those first few weeks when it was like the inner chatter was really loud was, "I deserve time to myself."
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. I deserve time for myself. Yeah, definitely. So, Sam, when you heard basically the voice or the truth inside of you say perfect spirit, I mean, what was your reaction to that?
It was just like it was real curious. It was like I immediately knew that's it. Spirit is whole. It's perfect. It's just the body and mind that are damaged. Then that deep knowing came that all was well, and that was it for me.
So that was kind of like your awakening.
Right. That was my first of three awakenings that I had.
Right. Okay. So once you heard that and you understood that, your spirit was fine and you just needed to work on your body and you started to get off the meds. You said it took you about 18 months to get off the meds?
Yeah, it took me 18 months. I had a box full of medicine. I didn't stop them all overnight. I know that'd be too traumatic for the body. So I was taking each medicine and reducing it by a quarter dose for every 2 weeks. That's how I was doing it, and it just took a long time. And I didn't work with my doctors with this on anything except for the one medicine was addictive. But my doctors, I just followed this inner guide the whole time for my whole recovery. I didn't seek outside help. It was just following this inner voice, this inner knowing that was guiding me the whole way.
Right. And you were getting off the meds, and what were you doing to kind of train the mind? Because I know that many times, even if we have this inner knowing, the ego plays a big part of our mind when we start off on this journey.
Yeah, but after that night, I was fortunate. The mind pretty much went quiet after that night. I saw it was no longer in charge. And now the heart was in charge. This inner voice was in charge. It wasn't this chatter that was in charge anymore. I could laugh at it. It's like, this isn't the truth. Because I could see at that point that I have thoughts, but I am not my thoughts. As a
Right.
bipolar, I was like, I am my thoughts. I listen to my thoughts as the absolute truth.
And how did this began to change your life? Your work, because I know now you have this amazing business that you're building. But how did this deep knowing start to change your life? How did you go and change the mentality from that timid person, introvert person that you were, to this amazing man who you are now?
It was just, well, after that big shift, it was pretty much easier, but I kept with a meditation practice, and I still do a meditation practice. I still sit for hours at a time, or hours a day. Usually an hour twice a day is usually what I'm sitting, but it's a lot. It's just a matter of that self-care work, that self-work. There's not usually, it's that taking that time for ourselves. We're just so busy in this society doing those 1001 things that our mind wants us to do, constantly chasing, and we're not slowing down, taking time for ourselves. So we take time for ourselves, then we sort of take back control from the mind. It's no longer the dictator that we're not good enough or that we're lacking in some way.
Right, and you have some great insight. So how long after did you started thinking about writing this book, I Don't Dwell?
Well, when I wrote the book, it was like pretty much my friends. It's just like after everything was done, all my friends and family were like asking, "How did you transform yourself?" And at the time, I really couldn't answer because I was just following my inner guide. So when I wrote the book, I had to go back and retrace all the steps that I did and look at my journals that I was keeping and just try to glue things back together. But initially, it was hard to start because thinking about life as a bipolar, it seemed so foreign by that time. Even though it was only like 2 or 3 years, it seemed like ages ago. And being disabled with multiple sclerosis and all the skin problems, the psoriasis and the arthritis. After 2 years, it seemed like it was like a different person. It was really hard to get back into that space. And that's what I'm trying to do now, is just go back into that space so I can remember and people can understand what I went through. Because if I gloss over it, then they think I don't understand their issues or their problems. But I do. I lived it for 40 years.
Right, and that's amazing. Talking about going back into your story, how did the doctors react? Did you ever go back to your doctors? What were they saying when you actually got off the meds?
Well, the last doctor I saw, I usually canceled most of my doctor's appointments. I'm figuring they're specialists. People need to wait 6 to 8 weeks to see them. I can help somebody by canceling my appointment, so somebody in need can go get visited by a doctor. But I did keep my one neurologist appointment, and he talked to me for a good 45 minutes trying to figure me out, and he just couldn't. I mean, he gave me an examination. The only thing he saw with me was a non-specific hand tremor. He says, most people have this. Your blood work is better than mine. I have no idea.
You're a miracle, baby. Definitely, definitely. And then, how about your wife? I know you've been married for over 20 years. When she saw this transformation, what did she say? What was her reaction?
She was surprised. Like when I came off the first medicine, I didn't tell her I was going off medicine until I was off the first medication, just to see how that test was going. Then I let her know that I no longer take this medicine, and I didn't explain things to her, and she didn't really understand. She just saw me getting better, but it was slowly getting better as I was tapering off, recovering the body. It just went by over 18 months. It's like when you see somebody every day, it's hard to notice changes. It's like
Right.
somebody loses weight, you don't really see it until like somebody mentions it, but afterwards she's like, "Wow, that was quite the transformation."
No, I'm sure she's glad too to see you well and doing all the wonderful work you're doing in the world.
Yes, it's good to see me well, but now it's changed things for us. She's used to the marriage where I was like a couch potato. We would watch a lot of TV together and just spend a lot of time together. Now I'm not so much interested in TV and some of those old activities. I just realized they were just distractions. The mind was just creating distractions, and instead of doing that self-care work that everyone needs to do.
Definitely, definitely. So, Sam, for someone who's in your position right now, someone who's going through illness, depression, any kind of adversity and conditioning, deep conditioning like you were going for 40 years, what three pieces of advice would you have for them?
Just to slow down. My biggest thing is just to slow down and just have compassion for yourself. The voice in your head that tells you that you're lacking, that you're not good enough, that you're not deserving, needs to be put aside. Because God made everyone equally. I see everyone as an equal. And we keep going by all these titles, thinking somebody's more important than us or we're more important than someone else. And we're just ultimately equal in the eyes of God. Everyone is equal. We're all this perfect spirit. We're all just in different bodies. That's all.
Right. Yeah, slow down. And myself, I had to learn that. Even in, like something so small, like trying to lose the weight, I had to learn to be kind and take it one day at a time and become present. And that definitely changed my life. And I think that once you slow down, you can receive that inner guidance from yourself, and you'll be happier. So it's definitely great advice.
Yeah, but it is hard to get there because we're so used to being on the hamster wheel, chasing the mind for happiness. The mind is so conditional. If you look at what it requires for you to be happy, if you can really take a look back from that and say, I'm just chasing the mind. The mind has all these impossible conditions to meet to be happy and to stay happy. If you're happy, it lasts for 2 or 3 seconds. Then the mind immediately sees the next problem, the next issue that creates unhappiness.
Yeah, the constant future tripping, like we call it, the always looking ahead as to what's to come, not being in the present moment. And I think that once you develop a practice of being in the present moment, it helps you, become happier. I had to do, I'm actually teaching a course. It's called Sexy Soul Makeover right now. And what I teach women is to see those things that actually make them happy. I realized that I didn't have to buy that car. I didn't have to get that house. I didn't have to, get that degree and all these long-term goals for me to be happy. There was things in the present moment that if I just sat still, I can see were making me happy, like my tea in the morning, like taking my kids to the bus stop. So yeah, definitely. There's so many things that makes us happy, and we have control of being happy every single day by being present in the moment and enjoying the things that we're doing. But our
Right.
mind is constantly looking for the next thing.
Yeah, it's always chasing the next thing, but that's the whole thing is just slowing down and learning to be present and not believing all the thoughts in the head, all the unkind thoughts. If it's unkind words, then it's just coming from the mind because the spirit or essence is that Christ consciousness that loves everybody unconditionally and judges no one.
Right. So, Sam, if you can describe your journey with one word, what would you say?
Persistence
Persistence. And why?
of doing that constant practice, persistent with my practice. If I tried to meditate for 5 minutes a day and I gave it like 3 days, it wouldn't have done anything. It was being persistent for those first 2 weeks of just saying, I deserve time to myself. It's that persistence or the vigilance, to do that, to do that practice. But I think it's persistence.
Yeah, it's, really wanting it. So I'm so happy you said that, because I think that with everything, some days you wake up, you don't want to go to the gym. Some days you wake up, you don't want to meditate, and then you feel icky that day because you didn't meditate. And there's a million excuses in our head as to why we can't do this and we can't do that. But it's so like rewarding when we persist in our practice. Would you agree?
Yeah, because that mind is a constant distraction. The mind's always too busy. It's a distraction. So I will see with the persistence is that right action versus the distraction. The right action is doing that meditation in the morning or doing the yoga or going to the gym or taking that walk in the park. Or the distraction is, oh, I'm just going to sit here in front of the TV. I'm going to go do this other thing instead of going for that walk, taking time for ourselves, getting some fresh air. It's so easy we get so comfortable. It's time to get up and get moving or do something. If we want to change our course in life, we really have to take action. It's just not going to automatically change by itself, by a whim. We just, like, I couldn't take all this medicine and see all the doctors and expect that my life is going to improve. The whole point of the medicine was to keep me stable. That was about it. It wasn't to make me better. People with multiple sclerosis don't get better. They sort of get to a baseline. They slowly progress down. Well, I've actually gotten better. I mean, I'm the world's only known MS juggler. I have
Oh,
coordination.
wow.
I have coordination in my left hand now. I don't know if any MS patient can say I lost coordination. I got it back.
That's amazing. Congratulations. And congratulations on your book. I absolutely love it. Everybody should get it. It's called I Don't Dwell by Sam Shealy. It's definitely an amazing book. Your website is amazing too. So can you talk to us about your site? Because I know that you do mindfulness coaching, and I
Yeah.
want everybody to know about that.
What I help people with is their mindset, helping them to discover those roadblocks. They might not even aware they have a roadblock. Like I talk to a lot of people and they have that perfectionism. Perfectionism is a roadblock because it actually keeps you stuck because you're trying to meet these conditions in the mind that keep you in that perfect state. And if you just let life flow, then you see it's okay. It says self-criticism. So I help people to see the roadblocks and how they move through that, then how they can thrive. It's all about thriving, of getting out of the mind and just finding that natural state of bliss. Then I have some other abilities that I usually use by mentoring. Is that after I did all these amazing awakenings that I've had some healing gifts come to me, divine healing gifts. So when I talk to people, if they're really stuck, I can use these divine gifts that come through. It's just really hard to explain them, but they're quite amazing, the results that people get from that. Is that I approach from two ways. I look at it to see where their beliefs are challenging them, or if they have a physical injury, some kind of stuck energy that I can just move and heal.
Right, and I personally had energy healing from you. We did that session, and I felt immediately better. My energy was back up, and I felt good for days. So it's definitely you do definitely good work because I've had healing sessions before, but the way I felt the energy move in my body almost immediately after we started, it was great, and I absolutely loved it. Um, I know you have other things going on too, like meetup groups. I know you have a men's spirituality group and you have a law of attraction group. Talk to us about that.
Well, the men's group, I decided that there wasn't enough men's group around here. There's usually most of the groups that go around here are usually women dominated. I felt like men needed a place to go where they can talk about their spiritual needs. I know some men are self-conscious too. They don't want to talk about their experiences. They have to be the tough macho guy. So I'll try to break those barriers down. But the one I'm most excited about is the Law of Attraction group. Because I was recently flying down to New Orleans for a TV interview. And during that time, Perfect Spirit came to me and channeled a book. I wrote a whole book on my trip down to New Orleans and back on Law of Attraction. It's like a different version of Law of Attraction according to Perfect Spirit. It's like a version 2 of Law of Attraction. And it's really powerful because it takes this Law of Attraction with this healing energy that I have, and it really allows people to manifest and create their desires. So I've been having a lot of fun playing with this Law of Attraction group and doing workshops within that. Because I get into this transcendent space when they do this manifestation exercises, and it really helps them clarify what they want, creating that focus, that image. Even with the normal law of attraction, they always talk about setting that positive vibration, the positive energy, but people have a hard time maintaining that. When I can get to the space, they have no choice but to be in that space because I am nothing but high vibration when I'm sitting in meditation. So that's why I really help people. And I relate to my whole story to law of attraction. When I was very worried, that was very negative. So in this negative state, I attracted incurable diseases, a box full of medicine, and a cane. So when I kept in that negative state, it kept all those things in place. When I found that peace, it had no more energy for that negativity. There was no more sense of fear, so that just dropped away. And now I'm in perfect health. No medicine, no nothing.
Right, and that's great. So if somebody wanted to join your meetup group for the law of attraction, how can they join?
Well, it's also, first I'm in Philadelphia. It's an in-person group. I may run it online in the future, but right now it's an in-person meetup group. And if they go onto Meetup in Philadelphia area, it's called One Perfect Spirit Law of Attraction. Because I see it as one perfect spirit. We're just one spirit. We're just in different bodies, but it's all one.
And I love that concept. I love the oneness concept because it just shows us that we're all equal and, we're all connected with the same energy. And it's so true. It is absolutely true. And I found that out when I had an experience where I basically woke up and I felt like I was in love with everything, and they call that a state of bliss. So I had a state of bliss for 3 days, and it completely changed my outlook of the oneness concept, and I so believe in that. So Sam, can you tell everybody where they can contact you?
Well, they can contact me on my website at don'tdwell.org, and it's actually under my name, my site there. So, and I'll probably be on my Facebook page a little bit later on the Don't Dwell Incorporated Facebook page if anybody has any questions, because I don't really see a chat box here in the Google Hangout to answer questions or see if any questions are coming up. But yeah, I really like to help people, really tune into them, and I pretty much get Sam out of the way and let Perfect Spirit talk. That's one of my gifts, is that I'm always connected to Source. And I don't know what I'm saying half the time. I just let this energy come through me. I'm just a conduit at this point. I just trust and just people will just ask me the weirdest questions and I'll have no idea and an answer will arise.
Right, and I can attest to that. I mean, you're an amazing conduit of this beautiful higher source, power, whatever you want to call it. And the work you do is so needed. And I'm so honored to be your friend and be doing this interview with you because I really wanted people to hear your story. And Sam, I just want to congratulate you again for the book. I read it and it was absolutely amazing. The story was so empowering and and wow, like that's all I have to say. For someone to go through so much conditioning and adversity and be able to come out and do this wonderful work. I mean, wow, congratulations. You're absolutely amazing.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And if people are curious, they can read the first chapter on my website. The first chapter is there for them to read.
Yes, there's a
Yeah, so it's
sample
been getting pretty
chapter.
good reviews. Then if people are unsure if I can help them, we can talk for free. There's no talk for there's no charge for the first talk to see if I can help them. And then I do a lot of stuff by donation. My feeling is that I need to help everyone, regardless of their financial situation. Just look at my program, say this will really help me, but I can't afford this. I can afford this. Just contact me. I'll work with you. I have to work with everyone. That's why I'm changing my company to a nonprofit. It's all based on what you can afford. People are under the mindset that they have to pay more money to get higher quality services. And I want to change that. I want them to get the highest level of service at what they can afford. They shouldn't be penalized because of their financial situation. Just because you can't afford my programs doesn't mean you're excluded. It's not a special club.
Yeah, wow, that's great. So if anybody want to contact Sam, his website again, and I know it was under his name, but it's don'tdwell.org. And like he said, if you need the help, please contact Sam. There's a free call, and you can just talk to him about your financial needs, and he'll be able to help you with whatever you can pay. So yes, thank you so much for being with us, Sam. I truly appreciate it. Is there anything else you would like to say?
No, just come over to Facebook, the Don't Dwell page, if you want to chat, ask questions. I am there, and I will be happy to help you out. And like I said, usually you can ask me the weirdest questions. I won't know immediately. I'll have to sit with it and see what comes up. But it's always fun. And we got to work on your 3 days of bliss. We got to make that to every day. I
Yes,
think
we got to
already
have a
there.
bliss day.
You're in denial. You're there every day. Your mind's just creating a little veil. Look at that smile. I know you're there.
Yeah, yeah. I try to be happy every single day, consciously making the decision to be happy. So
Right.
yes, I cannot wait to have a blissful day every single day. Well, Sam, thank you so much. I'll be joining you in your website. I'm sorry, in your Facebook after this call. So if anybody have any questions or want to talk to Sam, join us in Sam's Facebook page, and which is what is it, Sam?
It's Facebook, / Don't Dwell. And it's actually, let me get the URL here. It's Don't Dwell Inc. So DONTDWELLINC. Don't Dwell Incorporated. And that company is changing a little bit to a nonprofit. It's no longer it'll be a nonprofit entity going forward once I can make that change to a 503 organization.
Okay, so I will see you over in your page, Sam, and I'll see everybody else. Talk to you later.
So long.
Thank you. Satnam.
So, no.